Thank you very much indeed. Your Excellencies, Vice Minister Teho Lee, Commissioner Albert Muchunga, and Ambassador Yon Ho Cho. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Good morning in my case, and good afternoon in yours. I think, let me just make sure my slides are working, which way they're working. I think the most important thing that we have clearly seen in this first year of the decade of the 2020s is that three zeitgeists have come together in Africa. I love this word, zeitgeist. It's a German word meaning world spirit or world mover. And those three zeitgeists are firstly the digital economy, secondly the COVID pandemic, and thirdly the African Free Trade Area, which, as His Excellency Muchunga said just now, is something which is about to start on the 1st of January next year. I think had we spoken just, let's say, 9 months ago on this platform, we would have seen something completely different. There would have been an utterly different picture to report on. The digital economy is definitely the silver lining in the dark cloud of COVID. And in Africa, that is particularly true. So I'll just take you through my slides. Some of them are there for more for information than to talk to. The Commissioner mentioned the population. We are a very young continent. 60% are under the age of 25 or under. This is an enormously growing continent. But one of our issues, which you will all be aware of, is that although Africa is the continent of the mobile phone, internet connectivity is still a low 40% compared to the global average of 60%. Now, that connectivity is estimated to grow by 11% in the next 10 years. My feeling is, from looking at what's been happening over these last 8 months of the COVID lockdown, that new innovations are coming in all the time. I've just put in one of them, which is the alphabet loon balloon system, which has been set up with Telecom Kenya and covers the central part of Kenya, including Nairobi. That will provide new connections to a very large percentage of the populated area of Kenya. There are many other examples. If I just look at some of the issues, the whole question of how blockchain as an instrument for trust and transparency will change Africa. And we already see that in process. For example, one of the regional economic communities, COMESA, is setting up a cross-border customs clearance system using blockchain as its base. There are also the possibilities of cryptocurrencies. Now, some governments are still rather dubious of cryptocurrencies, but they are increasing enormously. And I think it's very interesting to see that in the 12 months from June 2019 to June 2020, the amount of transfers into and from Africa of under $10,000 increased by more than 55%. So you can see this cryptocurrencies are not just being used any longer in Africa as a way of investment or a way of looking at a Bitcoin, for example, as something to own and hope that it appreciates. It is also becoming a reality, a real reality. And they are particularly important for Africa because of currency fluctuations between different countries, and therefore their ability to stabilize trade. Then there are many other examples. I put 4 down here. I think I'd like to just quickly look at one of those, which is addressing the unaddressed. We have a very large number of people in Africa who have no addresses. Because they have no addresses, they often don't have an identification. It's not necessarily that they're stateless, it's that they just have never been registered in their country of origin, where they were born. We also have, obviously, problems with banking as well. Banks will not open accounts for people who don't have addresses. So it's become a vicious circle. So if we can get over this, this system of non-addresses by addressing the unaddressed, we will be going a long way. E-commerce, which is my specific subject, has definitely leapfrogged 5 years during COVID. And it has done so principally because suddenly people have got more trust in it. And I don't just mean consumers are more trusting, but also that businesses have become more trusting of e-commerce. And that's a very big leap forward. I've given you some figures here, no need to go into those. You can have a look at my presentation afterwards. But I think it is extremely important, not just in the more, let's say, developed parts of Africa, like Mauritius, for example, like Egypt, like Morocco, or like South Africa, Rwanda, or Kenya, or Ghana, or Senegal. It's throughout the whole of Africa that we can see this movement growing of more e-commerce being used. We are still very new as an industry, as a sector, and therefore there is a serious lack of data on e-commerce. I can't really give you very good data. This comes from Statistica. Personally, as an economist, I actually rather doubt the figures here, but they are the only figures that we have. And as you can see, these were done pre-COVID last year, and they estimate up until 2023. I think these are now completely out of date, Nielsen research has shown that in those 3 countries, Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya, consumers have increased their online shopping by over 30%. So it's an enormous increase. And just because of COVID, just because of the close down of a lockdown in COVID. So we really do see a great move forward, a leap forward. And Africa, in a way, is well known for its leap forwards. It has leapt forward in banking and mobile money. It has leapt forward in the use of the mobile rather than landline. This is another, let's use that German word again, Zeitgeist, world mover, which has shifted the parameters in Africa. I got some examples together of ONTAC or UNTAC solutions, what we call African solutions for African challenges. And again, I just have a look at them because I'm not going to go through them in detail. I think some of them are really very interesting though. In particular, the new company in Ghana, which rents drones to help small scale farmers check the health of their crops and use less pesticide. Using less pesticide not only is environmentally helpful, but also allows those Ghanaian farmers to sell to Europe, where pesticides are controlled strictly. So that's a very a nice example of the sorts of things that are happening. My favorites, because they're members of mine and I love them dearly, is Brown Sense. Brown Sense is a South African Facebook community of around about 2,000 people. You have to register to be part of it. But they reckon that around about 30% of those 200,000 are selling their services or goods on the platform. Now, I think this shows that e-commerce is not just a business for the big companies, for the Jumeirahs or Amazon or Alibaba, or in South Africa, we have one called Takealot. It is not just for them. It is also a business model that is being seized upon by micro-sized companies, sole traders, and also by SMEs who need to sell at a distance and have recognized the importance of using e-commerce to do so. I think this is a really, really nice example. And it shows how large the e-commerce fraternity is in every country. Many of these people don't sell more than, maybe a couple of $1,000 worth of business in a year. But it is something that is giving them extra payment, and it's helping inclusivity of the whole society, including women, young people, rural communities, etc. Now, the main challenges, I was asked to address these main challenges to e-commerce, and obviously you will be very well aware of them. But just to remind you of what we are facing. And of course, I should very quickly say that these do vary, these issues vary from country to country. We have 55 states in Africa. They are very different in the way in which they are created, how their economies work, how their society works, how their culture works. So it's not, you can't say this is number one, number two, number three problem. They're problems which are hit different countries in different ways at different times. The first of those is, of course, the lack of transport infrastructure. There are some exceptions to that, but it is a very serious one. How we can, as the African continent, start to connect ourselves with roads, rail, and also air cargo as well. This is a very big problem. One of the major e-commerce companies in Nigeria, Konga, has said that they are going to introduce drone deliveries. I don't think they have yet done so, but it's a very interesting concept, and they're putting quite a lot of money behind that. Jumeirah, which is known as the Amazon of Africa, has suddenly realized that its problem in actually making money and making its business work properly was delivery. And it has gone into delivery in a big way over the last few months. The second thing I mentioned already is connectivity. The fact that we are still lacking connectivity, and that is also because of the cost of data in some countries. It's due to unstable connections in some countries, and to the cost and stability of electric power as well. We mustn't forget that. We have problems with electric power, except in some countries which are lucky enough to have hydroelectric dams, etc. Online payment systems in some countries are lacking, or they don't operate, or they can't operate properly due to rules and regulations. But then again, in other countries, for example, Kenya is one of the great examples of mobile money, so-called M-Pesa system. So cutting edge innovation is really there, and it's there to stay. Lack of investment. The commissioner mentioned that it would be nice to see more South Korean investment in Africa. I very much hope that that will be the case and that you will invest in the digital economy. Please do. You are the experts. You are the leaders in the digital economy. So we look towards you to help us. But I think investment is getting better, even despite the COVID. And I think it will be even better if we have more data to provide to investors to show them exactly what's going on. Cross-border tariffs and non-tariff barriers and all these sorts of things are going to be addressed over a period of time by the African Free Trade Area and by the regional economic communities. And of course, that will take time, but it will happen. Financial central bank regulations is one of my bête noire, as they say. It's just taken me over a month to set up a bank account here in South Africa for a non-profit organization. So it does cause problems, and it causes some difficulties, and we must try and get around that. I consider that the regulations of central banks, financial institutions, very often are non-tariff barriers. Cybersecurity, big issue. We lack skills, and because we're still very new, we fall into trap of cyber criminals, which is very worrying. Education on the digital economy and the skills of the digital economy. As in everywhere, we need more on that. The lack of necessary consumer protection, competition policy, intellectual property, and data protection legislation in many countries is very noted. And it does reduce the trust that both business and consumers have in the digital economy and obviously in e-commerce. And then there's the old issue of bureaucracy, red tape, and lack of clarity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The World Bank does an annual report on the ease of doing business in different countries, and Mauritius came number 20 out of all the countries, Rwanda 29, Kenya 61, South Africa was 82, and Botswana was 86. So it's getting better, but of course it could be much better. And I think this will be driven very much by the African Free Trade Area. It will get things going. The African Digital Transformation Strategy, which was adopted by the African Union earlier this year, for a 10-year program. As you can see, I'm not going to read it out, but it has some really important issues within it. Reducing barriers to cross-border trade, developing enabling regulatory framework for e-commerce, which will start next year, on the 1st of January, allowing regional and continental integration of data markets, developing and improving the regulatory environment for fintechs and payment systems, and addressing issues to do with delivery. All these are incredibly important, and they are outlined in the transformation strategy. So to conclude, the African Free Trade Area, scalability, reindustrialization, employment, and I've added, to me, one of the most important, African pride. Pride by Africans of what they produce in Africa. We will see the African Free Trade Area being negotiated over a long period of time. It's not going to happen tomorrow or even next year, but it will slowly happen. And it is very necessary that we have the support of leading countries like South Korea in, for example, the World Trade Organization, where I know you're a very active member of the e-commerce expert group. These are places that we need support, diplomatic support, political support. In terms of the actual cross-border trade, one of our biggest problems, I believe, is that there is very little trust, not between consumers and e-commerce or between business and e-commerce, but between states in Africa. It has taken a long time for states to start to learn to work together. And in some cases, they still don't. There are plenty of examples where suddenly one state will unilaterally take trade action against another. So we need to work towards creating a greater trust between the states of Africa and creating economies of scale for business, the scalability, which is not necessarily as obvious to business as it should be. So one of the things that we are trying to do in the e-commerce forum Africa is to get messages out on how scalability will work, how the economies of scale will work. If you are a business in, let's say, Togo, and your next door neighbor is Nigeria, near next door neighbor is Nigeria, you may feel somewhat overwhelmed, but you have expertise in your country, which Nigerians don't necessarily have. And it's learning those expertise and building on them to create a real vibrant business. Encouraging the digital economy and e-commerce as drivers, the untact and on-tact world, to be the drivers of industry and of business throughout Africa is going to be very important. Building manufacturing through demand. We really do need to get more manufacturing going in order to employ the youth who are coming into the employment markets now. It's not a negotiable issue. We must do that. And that means also the renaissance of business to provide employment for youth, women, rural communities, and other disadvantaged people. So finally, this point that I made before, that we have to create a pride in made in Africa. We have some excellent examples in the fashion industry, for example, where African fashion is not just being sold in Africa, or throughout Africa, but also on the global market, and not just to the diaspora as well. We need to build that sort of thing. The pride of made in Africa is incredibly important. And I think examples of cooperation, there is a group of 32 nations which have got together under Smart Africa to try to have initiatives and grow initiatives. They are looking at smart cities, they're looking at smart villages, they're looking at payment systems, etc. These are very, very important. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for listening. I was asked to write a paper earlier this year, which actually I finished rewriting it just as COVID struck. So it's slightly outdated, but it is the digital economy and e-commerce in Africa drivers for the African Free Trade Area. It has some good parts to it, some not such good parts, but anyhow, I wish you well in reading it. And I will be writing another paper, just finished it for SIA, with a co-author who's a specialist in blockchain. And we're going to produce that, I think it's on the first week of December sometime. Please feel free to contact me, and to the organizers again, thank you very much indeed for your professionalism and for this excellent initiative. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen.